Okay, good afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, October 3rd. First on our agenda this evening is a presentation on solid waste collection study. Turn it over to the city manager.
We've got Jeff with SCS that will give our presentation and the recommendation. And I think we'll cover next steps too, right?
Right. Yep. Okay.
Welcome.
Well, welcome. Thank you for your time today. So go through our presentation here. Again, my name is Jeff Phillips with SCS Engineers. And want to go through the results of the study that we had done. And the purpose of the study was to take a look at the existing collection systems and see if there couldn't be improvements for it. Basically trying to position the city of Marion into the future long-term solutions for not only its fleet force, but also its labor force and the services. So one of the first things we did was there's a lot of different services that you all provide, and there's a lot of data, there's a lot of different information. So we collected all of that information and tried to look at the waste, the recycling, the yard waste, and then the management of the compost facility, then also understand where that material was going, how it was being managed, how much it was costing, who was doing that work, not just now, but then also taking a look at what might happen to the city as it continues to grow and what types of services it may need and what those costs might look at. With that process, then we developed a baseline. Okay, for the 13,000 households that are collected each week, each one of them has an opportunity to set out 40 pounds max of waste. There's 18 to 32 gallon of recyclables that could be also set out. Yard waste could be set out, and then there's also some additional services that are provided. So with that understanding, what is it currently costing the city to perform those services right now? So as of, so what we took a look again was the labor, the equipment, the fuel, the maintenance of that equipment, the administration, and then tipping fees, because you're not only are you taking material to a facility where they charge a tipping fee, but you're all taking materials to a compost facility, which also costs money to process those materials. So we identified what those costs were and put that into the tipping fees. And so for the current services right now, it's about $16.67 per household, meaning that's what it's costing the city, according to our model, to perform those services. So taking a look at, okay, now we've established a baseline for the services that we've got and the costs that are there. What are some options? What are some scenarios that we can put into the model to determine, well, what if we try this? Or what if we do that? What might be the potential impact? And so we came up with 15 to 16 scenarios that we looked at and asked a lot of what if questions, worked with staff, and then narrowed that basically down to 6 scenarios that seemed doable and seemed to have some interest. So I'll go through each of these rather quickly. A is mixing or dividing recycling and garbage. So you'd have one cart, and on one part of the cart would be recyclables, the other part would be garbage, and you'd have a split truck that would be able to accept that material. And then yard waste would be in another container. And then you can see these 3 scenarios here are basically the same in the sense that each resident would potentially receive 3 carts, one for waste, one for recycling, and one for yard waste. The different scenarios had to deal with the type of truck, the frequency of collection. And so A1 was we're going to have a split body truck that's going to be able to collect garbage and recycling at the same time and keeping the material separate. Scenario B was single body trucks where it would collect just one unit of garbage, or then the next truck would then collect recycling. But recycling in scenario B would be performed every other week. Scenario C is single body trucks collecting everything every week. Scenario D is a little bit different in that we're looking at source separated organics. And so that's just looking at the material a bit differently than we previously have been. And so anything that's considered organic, paper, cardboard, those types of things, while they're currently being recycled in the recycling program, what if we collected them with yard waste and treated them as an organic, some compostable material? So we looked at that scenario. And scenario E was, okay, what if there's a technology that's able to manage all of this and we're not required to have the residents or customers do anything other than put it into the tote? So we looked at that scenario as well. So then it comes to, okay, so we've got our base model and we want to establish our cost estimates, what it's costing the city to perform each of these scenarios. So scenario A, $18.71 scenario A1, where it's a split body truck collecting garbage and recycling weekly, was $19.50. Scenario B, where we're collecting recycling every other week using single body trucks, was $19.29. Scenario C, single body truck, we're collecting everything weekly, $20.26. The source separated organics, $21.53, and then there's going to be a technology maybe down the road somewhere that is able to process everything. So that came out at about $19.39. So we collected that information, but we also wanted to get a sense from the community. Well, what is the community interested in? So we worked with city staff to write some survey questions to really engage with them to determine what types of services they were interested in, and what might be reasons that they wouldn't be interested in particular services. So excellent response rate, about 2,000 respondents to the survey, and 81% of those respondents indicated that they supported transitioning to an automated collection, which is the person that's operating the collection vehicle stays in the vehicle for a majority of the day and uses a mechanical arm to collect the garbage using those carts that we showed. And then 90% said, hey, we're in favor of those wheeled carts. We really like them. And in fact, we like them so much, we'd like them for garbage, recycling, and yard waste. Not a combination, but just it would be nice to have those types of carts for all of our services. We also thought it'd be interesting, well, okay, those are you responding. How often do you participate in recycling, or do you? And 98% said, yes, we do. And 90% of those people said we participate weekly, which is great. So you got a great participation in your programs. To start to get additional feedback and sort of passive engagement is the staff went to some uptown markets and had about 1,500 visitors where the carts were there, so they could interact with them and see what they look like and get a sense for how they were used and how they might be used at their household. And had some really good response from residents that engaged with your staff. So kind of now we get to, okay, we wrap it up into a recommendation from SES engineers as to a scenario that the city should, that we would recommend the city consider for implementation. And that's scenario A1. And scenario A1 is a split body truck where it's collecting garbage and recycling at each stop that it goes to. And then the yard waste would still be collected by a single body truck. When we go automated collection, we'll talk about this in another slide. Currently, the staff is doing about 400 to 500 homes a day. Using this system, you would be able to double the amount of homes that you're able to collect in a single day. So we would have 3 dedicated waste and recycling trucks, and you'd have 1 backup, and then you'd have a dedicated yard waste truck. Now, if you want additional backup trucks, that's fine, but the model says, hey, this is what the model is recommending the city do. If you've not seen a cart before, we wanted to just show a variety of that they do come in different sizes, of course. You know, each family has different needs. So most cities that go to automated collection typically provide the resident an opportunity to select a cart. And there's a whole strategy of what you offer and what the rates are, and that can come down the pike later. But typically it's 1 to 2 choices, probably not 4 or 5 different choices, because that's a lot of material to have to keep in inventory. So as a reminder of, well, then the cost for A1, again, for the city model there, you can see that off to the side there, the model says the city cost would be about $19.50. Off to the right of those numbers, the model was also taking a look at, what if we contracted this out? And so the contractor low is representing, what if it's a really competitive contract bid? What do we think the bids might come back at as a cost to that contractor? So 2639 would be a competitive market, and 29.61 would be a not competitive market. So what this is showing is that the programs that you have and the system that you have is pretty efficient cost-wise as well. So some improvements, like I said, so able to increase the amount of homes that truck and that individual is able to service per day. And they're able to do that by improving the efficiency for collection. So they're able to be more efficient in what they're doing. It also increases the safety for your staff. Rather than getting on and off the truck for every single stop, they're only having to get out for an occasional situation where maybe that cart is too far or is behind a car or something like that where they can't get. So primarily they're going to stay in the vehicle, which is going to increase safety and longevity of that employee being able to do their work. Wheeled carts, your residents said they like wheeled carts, and most communities, when they switch to it, they love them. And with that, they'll have some additional increased capacity for potentially more recyclables or even more waste if they wanted to use that, depending on the type of cart that they would select. So with that, after we talked about the recommendations, so then we get into next steps. So the next steps would be if the city wanted to go with this recommendation and for the change of collection strategy, at this Thursday's meeting would approve collection strategy modifications and authorize next steps so that staff can then start talking about how many cart sizes do we want to offer and all the nuances that go into collection system change. Also the procurement for the vehicles. So the new vehicles that would need to be ordered so that they arrive hopefully at the same time that the carts do so that you can start rolling these things out. And then, like I said, working with city staff to determine cart sizes, determine rates that would be charged, and policies like who's going to be responsible for maintaining these carts. And then also city branding. It's a unique time that you're going to have when you change a collection system program. You're going to have a lot of attention on the program, so it's a great time to talk about the program and how they can properly participate. And then design and implementation of the rollout services and the schedule. And there might be some route changes that would need to occur because the collection system is changing. And that's it for me. Are any questions?
Thank you. Questions? I'm sure there are. Go ahead.
Thanks for this presentation.
Yeah.
I've been excited to hear about this and what the outcomes were, and this is an important decision and a beneficial decision for our city operations and our residents. So the current costing that you quoted was $16.67. Is that per month?
Per household per month.
Okay,
Correct.
per household per month. And that was set in 2021, correct?
2022.
Okay, so that was for FY
22.
FY 22?
Yes.
Okay. Do the cost comparisons between scenario A and all the way through to E, are those at the same analysis year?
Yes.
22? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So effectively then what we've got is there's roughly a $3 differential between current costs and the recommended A1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks.
You bet.
Steve?
Yeah, can you give me a little feedback on, I'm looking at A, and I didn't catch until you mentioned tonight, and I missed it in the reading material, that under scenario A, that where you have recycling and refuse together in the same container, that's actually
It's a split
a
container.
split container. So I didn't catch that until tonight.
Okay.
But most of the people I talked to and the comments we receive from individuals when we're at city council hours at the park and all of that, basically the comments I receive, or I think most of us receive, they're all in support of the general direction.
Mm-hmm.
They understand why we're doing it, why the need is there. So most of the comments and questions come back to how big are the containers going to be? How many am I going to have?
Right.
Because they're saying, hey, I don't, some towns have them all outside and that looks terrible. And I don't have room in my garage for all these containers. So comment about A versus A1 on why you're recommending A1 versus A, because it seems the split container would have some validity. What led you to A1 versus A or some of the others?
Part of it would be the confusion that a split container would provide. So
Okay.
we don't want to contaminate the recyclables. And when I have a container that has a divider in it, so that's primarily the reason. And also you have then a very specific truck that can service that cart. And so we wanted to build a little bit more flexibility into the program where there can be a different cart set out. And so the cost for having a very unique cart, which that split cart would be. I mean, they exist, but it's a pretty unique thing to go get.
Well, scenario A1 mirrors is basically what all the citizens are doing today.
Right.
You know, three different things.
Mhm.
So, don't need any feedback on this, but again, the questions I wrote down lead into the next steps. In other words, what kind of offerings are we gonna have? Because a lot of people really are asking about the size of the containers. Am I gonna have an option? So I think that's definitely important. I think the other question will be, what do all of the citizens do with all of these old containers? You know, they got all these 32-gallon containers in 13,000 households. What happens to all of those? And then, the other thing that I've heard from is in the future, and this is getting not an answer from you, but maybe from public services down the road. Because when we went to these systems, Cedar Rapids offers leaf collection at the curb. So is that going to be offered down the road as part of this plan as well? So those are questions that are out there that I hear a number of different times that we need answers to, and it's in the next steps.
Mhm.
But again, those are the questions I hear more often than anything else.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So Kim has been running point for us on this, this project. She's at a conference. She'll be here on Thursday. We will be adding an agenda item for Thursday, motion to direct staff to pursue the necessary steps to effectuate scenario A1. In addition to that, Kim and SCS has been working on a change order that they anticipate bringing back before council, probably not Thursday, but the next round of council meetings. That would include things like public engagement to get to Councilman Jensen, what you're talking about, just how to educating the community on what the offerings look like, how to use them, their options for the storage, but also some other things with the helping purchase. There might be some grant opportunities that we'd want to pursue as it relates to. So just a couple things of what would come next. I know Councilman Harper has asked me this privately, but we have the reserve slots for the builds, so that the action on Thursday would help us get our slots, actually order those slots to be to commence with the building. So
What kind of timeline potentially for full implementation are we looking at?
Well, if everything was under your control,
Right.
right? So I think what most cities are gonna do, I mean, so I'm gonna answer it in kind of a weird way, is that most cities are gonna roll this out in phases. If everything arrives as it's ordered, the goal would be next September,
Okay.
right? I think that's pretty aggressive. But I think it's something to strive for, because you're gonna be ordering these things in chunks, and they might not arrive in chunks, they might arrive in pieces. And so then it's like, just like other cities do, we're gonna roll this out in phases, and then eventually in the next month or the next 2 months, then the entire city is rolled out. Rolling it all out at once
Right.
can be done, but it might take a Herculean effort, so it might be just easier to phase it in.
Okay. And A1 is the recommendation, and that's supported by staff, I assume.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Randy? Did you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. Thought you did. Well, this is definitely one of the topics that we hear recurring, especially with people who have moved here from other places and have had the service. They see it as kind of a downgrade to be without it now. And people who have lived in Marion for a long time may not be as concerned about it, but I think with all the newer people who are moving from other communities, we hear about it all the time. And people are very happy with the services of the city, but this is one of the things they wished was different. So I think it's a positive thing to look at as long as we can afford it and then we can figure out how to pay for it all. So the containers, is that paid for by the city or by the residents?
It's included in our cost for the program.
Okay.
And the hope would be that as we'd be able to identify either organizational funding or state funding or federal funding to help pay for those containers.
There is such funding?
Yep. I mean, they want to support recycling, and part of supporting recycling is decreasing the cost, and that's the containers. So
Okay.
yeah, the containers are very expensive, but they last a long time. So yeah, there's funding
Okay, well, that's
opportunities out there.
positive.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think one comment I've heard is the containers that are spec'd out are actually heavier duty than the ones Cedar Rapids is using. I mean, I've heard that. I'm familiar with those. My son lives in Cedar Rapids. Cause again, they do all three size containers.
Right.
So which is not one of the options I would probably recommend, but anyway, I've heard that they're heavier duty than those, so that's probably a very good thing.
Gage?
Yeah, I just had a question, and I don't know if it's for you or for city staff, but when we, like, how would residents swap their contain, like, how do they get, where do we store all those containers? Where do they, like, do they pick them up somewhere, or do we have multiple locations, or is that way too far down the line logistically?
I think that'll be next steps because there are all these different dominoes that are all falling at the same time. But they're typically, the cities can't offer in the exchange. Like if you set it out, we will take it from you if you want it disposed. I know if it's me, I know maybe I should have thrown the container out years ago, but I'm still gonna use it in my backyard or something like that. So they still have the opportunity to keep it if they want, because right, it is theirs.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they may not want it anymore, and then they would have the opportunity to get rid of it, to dispose of it. But that would all be built into the delivery of the containers.
Got it. Cool, thank you.
Yep.
City council will be delivering the,
Yeah, we'll just be out delivering all the containers.
any other, did you have something else, Ryan? Okay, that's fine. Anyone else? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you very much. Next up is Amber with a discussion on office hours.
Good afternoon, council. With the last Marion Farmers Market happening last Saturday, just wanted to revisit this topic with you and see if there's interest in changing anything that we have been doing as far as office hours is concerned. Right now, the proposed plan would be to go to the Marion Public Library Saturdays during the cooler weather months, and then returning to the Tawby Farmers Market again in May when that resumes, but wanted to certainly hear your feedback.
Okay. Feedback. Anyone? Randy, go ahead. Oh, I see you playing with your mic, so I think you're ready to talk. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I appreciate us having this conversation because I think we're all about, making sure we're present and available for comments and questions. I also appreciate the touch base because being newer here, I think there's been some other changes made in communication where I think maybe the mayor or others were responding to a lot of things. Suddenly that's getting kind of filtered out to all of us with residents being able to email us directly and contact us with different questions or requests or some of the other thoughts that may have been communicated. I'll say when I've been at Tawby Park, it's usually busy. Like it's usually people stopping by and there's a lot of conversation and a lot of comments and questions. My first winter here at the library, I feel like I'm pulling people in to have a conversation. Like kids are coming in to get candy or a handout, and then the parents will kind of talk a little bit. But I'm like generating conversation with folks, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it's just a different environment. So that's why I appreciate we kind of have the chance to visit if during the winter time or on each side of the Tawby Park markets, that we're having them every week, or maybe it's in every other type of a situation. So I'll leave that open to my colleagues, but I will say I do struggle a little bit on those ones at the library just because they aren't quite as much conversation.
Go ahead.
I agree with Sarah's observation about the library. And I think really the library, for the limited time that we were at Hy-Vee, the library has a little bit of that same environment. People are there, they're on a mission. They've got kids in tow, they're whatever their natural cycle for, picking up books or returning books or whatever they're doing. But I also think in the cooler weather, we have to maintain some presence. I think that's important because then, there will be those times where a discussion will occur. So I would align around maybe having, one or two library office hours per month. The other thought that I had, and I did express it, to the group was, when Tawby Park ends, the last farmer's market, that we take a month off. Because it's still fall. Personally, we've got a lot of things that are going on, other activities that are taking place. And then to start whatever our next cycle of activity is in say November. And then when that concludes, or the month before Tawby starts, take that month off as well, just because of springtime related activities. So those, I generally agree with Sarah with the added provisions that I just stated in terms of when we start the next round of office hours.
Steve?
Yeah, so my comments are at the high level the same. Tawby Park is far more active than the library, and that's been the same way in the 6 years I've been on city council. So, but I think having city council hours somewhere is important. Hy-Vee did not work. When the library is being built, when we tried that, that was really bad, really slow. So I do like the library, but I personally am not concerned about having city council hours there every Saturday. If we exclude the mayor, because he's busy enough doing so many other things, we have 6 of us up here. And so if we 6 of us should be able to man that. And most of what we're gonna do is one time a month. We don't need 2 people there with a low amount of activity. So in that case, we're only doing it at best once a month. So, I mean, I would still continue to support that, whether we take a month off or not. That's not a big deal to me, but I think on an ongoing basis, having it every Saturday is probably still more important than not.
Anyone else? Gage?
Yeah, I agree with what Steve said. Even if it is lower activity throughout the winter in the library, I think having that community engagement opportunity is really important. And it does boil down to each of us doing it once a month or even less. So yeah, I'm okay with its current structure. Month off, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think overall, we should continue to have that community engagement presence.
Well, let's make sure everyone else has a chance to talk first, and we'll come back to second round of comments. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead. Sarah, go ahead.
Remind me, was it, when we're at the library, is it 9 to noon or do we 9 to 11?
9 to 11.
So I guess my feeling is, even though it's less traffic at the library in terms of people actually coming there to talk to us at the market, they're not there to talk to us either, but there's just more people coming through, and it just leads to more engagement. I think this is one of the things that really makes us stand out from our neighbors. I know residents in our neighboring communities see that as something impressive about our council, is that we are willing to be out there and be engaged. And it's not about the numbers, it's the fact that we're willing to do that. It just creates a really positive perception of our council and our willingness to be accessible with our residents and with the region. Like I said, it's one of the positives that I encounter when I share that with people, that, our council is at the library every Saturday. People see that as something that's really unheard of and unique. And I think it just leads to the positive perception of our city government and our city leaders. I get, we may not always be busy. And I think some of that, because initially when we started doing these 8 years ago, that we did a lot more outreach in terms of letting people know. And I think sometimes, it kind of falls to the background in terms of the constant reminder. And I think if we're more intentional, I've talked with Amber about that, and she agrees that, be more regular about reminding people that we're at the library. I think people just sort of forget. It's one of those things that you always have to continue that reminder, whether it's in the messenger or the weekly emails from the city manager. Kind of be more intentional about reminding people and see how that goes. Even at the library, when people walk in and they weren't aware of that we're there, and we say, we're here, we're city council and we're here, people seem to be impressed, like, oh, wow, okay, you're here to engage with people. So just being present and giving that indication, not just perception, but the actual true indication that we're accessible and we're available to hear issues and hear questions and to provide information, I think goes a long ways. And it's one of the reasons why we have such good rapport and reviews from the community in terms of city government. And then, in the city survey, the trust in government goes up, where nationally it's going down. I think because we're doing all of these multiple ways of outreach that show people that we're here and we're not trying to hide anything. We're being transparent. We're here to answer questions. We have information to share. We're here to listen to you. So that's just my opinion. I'm happy to support whatever the council wants to do. The other thing about having it, not every week, is it gets harder for people to remember. Oh, is it on the first Saturday or the third Saturday? Which Saturday is it? It's easy to just say every Saturday. And I don't want people to think that I don't want to, even though I do represent the city on Saturdays and Sundays and a lot of different events, I'm still willing, wherever I have a window, to take my turn. So we do have 7 people that can do take the rotation. I'm not shirking my obligation to be part of it. So wherever I can fit it in, I sure will. So anyway, just my 2 cents. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to revise what I said earlier. I think the mayor said it from a management of the program, so to speak, just knowing that, if it's library, we're going to be there every week. The dispersion of the presence across the 7 of us, is going to make that easy to achieve. So I stand corrected on my original position.
But maybe we do try to include it in the weekly. Why am I not thinking of the name of it?
In focus.
In focus. Thank you. We try that, weekly, and just include it in there and see if that impacts things. Because we have, quite a few people read that and pay attention to it. So.
Would it be helpful at all if I were to schedule you, or do you prefer to just look at your schedules and?
I like the scheduling mechanism.
Great, okay.
I mean, we can see who's there. If there's a gap, it's easy to fill it. Just.
And I can adjust it to put only 1 person per week. That's not a problem then.
Administratively, is it okay with you? I mean, are you okay? Or is it too much for you to
No.
manage, or?
No,
Okay.
we have a great partnership with the library, and they'll store the tote and the goodies, and we'll restock as needed, so.
And, do you have a different view on that? I know you and I have
No, I think.
discussed my view, but you have a different view on it.
Consistency is important, and so if we can consistently communicate out to the community when you'll be there. I certainly support holiday weekends, that kind of thing, taking a week off. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's reasonable, and people would see that as reasonable if we weren't there the week of Thanksgiving, or we weren't there the week of Christmas or New Year or whatever it is, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think one difference, I was just telling Gage, I think one difference that I see when you're at the library versus the park, you will see more kids at the library than you do at the park. So having more of those things, whether it's candy, toys, handouts for the kids, is important there. Then that helps bring the parents over. Then you can have some interaction like you talk about. You got to pull them over. And that's really, in my opinion, one of the ways to pull them over and engage them in conversation and ask them if they have any questions, concerns. So to me, that is the easiest way to get that going.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
So not directly related to the management of the program or the frequency at which we have a presence. One of the comments that was received at least one event, maybe a couple different events in the library last winter, and Bill, this might be more in your bailiwick, was the fact that there were people at the council table having a discussion was a distraction to a group that was in the community room. I think it was actually a group of people taking a proctored test. And so I just, maybe the location of our table, where that is situated might be optimized by putting it someplace else. So that's just a implementation issue that we should review for this year. And maybe that's the best spot. I don't know.
We'll be glad to take a look and see if there's a better option.
Yeah, not upstairs.
Just one last comment. I mean, the reason we started doing this in the first place was because we wanted to let the community know that we were accessible and that we were transparent and we were here to listen to them and to take their ideas. The other thing was that, there's so much happening and the city's moving so quickly and we're doing so many different things that it's important to share the right set of facts and information about what's going on. So before it becomes rumor, before it takes on a life of its own, and, so that we're there to share the right information. Someone comes and asks a question, we provide the right information about what the city's doing and why, which is really important as to why we're doing what we're doing. And that there's thought behind everything that we're doing, and you're able to have those discussions. So just another way to be able to share that stuff. So, okay.
Very
Do you
good.
have what you need?
I do. Thank you very much.
Anyone else on anything? Okay, thank you. Next is our upcoming agenda review. And the first item that's marked is on the third page under engineering. Anything prior to that item that needs discussion? Oh, Ryan, go ahead.
Just on the published agenda, I believe A10 will be coming, no? A10 staying on? Okay, I apologize.
Okay. Anything prior to E1? All right, Mike,
All right.
go ahead.
So this is an amendment with RDG for the pocket park we're gonna place the Home Depot, and I'll let Seth take over.
So this is an an addendum to the contract to add a lighting plan for the Caboose Park. When we originally were planning for this park, we weren't including lighting, but working with the steering committee, they felt that we needed to add lighting for aesthetics and for protection against vandalism purposes. So we wanted to bring this to attention because when we do the engineering estimate, that could run the estimate higher than expected. But we felt that we do need to do a lighting plan for this park.
Is there a separate steering committee for this park?
Yes, there
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Go ahead. Well,
So lighting, will that include security cameras?
So that would be a separate project that we are looking for and working with IT and PD on. So
So would the infrastructure be in place then with the lighting? Or
cameras.
we got a head shaking yes over there. Okay.
Carol says yes. Okay. Okay, that seems like an easy one. Anyone have any other questions? Okay.
I'm trying to make them all easy for you.
You have the next one, Mike.
Yep. So for the next two items, this is regarding the traffic signal repair. The reason this is coming to city council is because our purchasing policy that we adopted, these are unbudgeted items. So that's the reason, even though they're small dollar amounts, that they're coming forward. So later Leanne will do a amendment amendment to the budget, and this will likely be in there. So the first one is for Price Electric. This was for them to actually take down the mast arm and put up the wires that you see out there today. And then the contract with Anderson Bogert was actually to design the plans for Price to do that work and to get the permits that we needed to get through the DOT. There's also some work that Public Service did to temporarily get things working while we got our plan put together. So we have submitted this to our insurance, and their insurance is talking with their insurance. So we should be reimbursed for it, but it's still an unbudgeted item.
Okay. Is that clear to everybody? Questions? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to make sure clear. So next year in 2024, part of the plan for that intersection is replacing the entire intersection, all the lights.
Correct.
Traffic lights and everything. So those are all going to get completely replaced next summer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that project is under design right now, and that's why it made it easy to have Anderson Bogert out there to hurry up and put those plans together for that one span wire.
But this here is for still derecho repairs or what?
No, we had a vehicle that forgot to lower their arm and drove.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
hit-
Oh, that's what this was for. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Anything else on this item? Next one, Mike?
So the next one, similar case, but E4 is coming to you because this is over budget. So we had a budget of 37, so you can see the numbers that we got were over budget. So again, because of the purchasing policy, we're bringing this back to City Council. Stivers Ford is actually the state bid, so we were actually able to get it from Lynch Ford locally here, a little cheaper than the state bid, but it's still above that budget. And a super cab, just so you're aware, is just an extended cab. We have survey equipment that we want to have in the vehicle and not rolling around in the back of the truck. So this is to store that equipment.
That clear? Anyone else? Any questions? Okay. Next item.
The next item, originally, when we allocated the $600,000 of ARPA money that is the city allocation, we put it towards 7th Avenue. There's likely that we're getting another approximately $1.2 million from CMPO, but that would push the fiscal project of that, so we couldn't let the project until fiscal year 27. ARPA money has to be spended by 26. So in order to utilize this money and not waste it, we're reallocating it towards a project that we're using city ARPA funds for our sanitary sewer project, and water department is partnering with us then to do some water main fixes at the same time. So along Boyson, there's a new water main that they're putting in that's over that waterway to make the loop. And then they just have some water main that's older that they're having a lot of breaks on to go ahead and fix that. So we're bidding it per the ARPA regulations. So it just made sense to partner. So we're just taking that $600,000 that was gonna go towards 7th Avenue from 12th to 22nd and put it towards this project for water main. So it's still for water main, just a different project.
Because when we allocated it to 7th Avenue, we weren't planning on
We didn't know we were
the
gonna get that
$1.2
additional
million
money.
grant.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, I think that's it for you, Mike. Community development, F3 is marked. Any questions on F1 and 2? Okay, we have Kesha for F3.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Just wanted to provide a brief update on where we are with the comprehensive plan. In May, I have June. The RFP was released in July. We received 4 proposals from different consultants, and the selection committee unanimously approved or recommended for approval the contract with RDG. And so I bring that before you on this council for approval. Following that, we anticipate a little over a year of community plan development. This includes a steering committee, a technical committee made up of staff, so staff has their own input, and then a number of listening events, input events, pop-up events, community engagement throughout this plan. Ultimately, we anticipate it being adopted March of 25. Any questions of staff?
And we'll have a couple council members on the committee too, right? On the steering committee?
Correct. On the selection committee, I had Sarah and Will, and with that asked to be on the selection committee, the writing was on the wall, that they would also continue on the steering committee. Sarah had that question. She's like, didn't I already agree to this?
Okay. Okay, questions on this? Everyone okay? Thank you, Kesha. The remainder of that page, the abstention agenda, and then the regular agenda through the engineering items, nothing is marked for discussion. Are there any questions on those? None? Okay, we'll move on to community development. We have one item for Dave, F1.
Afternoon.
Hi, Dave.
That works. Okay, this will be a public hearing on Thursday regarding a moratorium on specific commercial uses within specific commercial corridors. We refer to them all as corridors. We're gonna do a quick little deep dive into specifically what's part of the moratorium, and then look at a few other options that were more single use responses that we kind of just barely hit a couple weeks ago. So on the map today is just showing there's 3 commercial districts all kind of highlighted by a bunch of different colors. They all represent different zoning districts within those areas. So these are the 3 areas that the moratorium will be focused on. And we'll zoom into them here in a little bit so we can get a really good idea of what it looks like and how many properties are being affected. Not that you need a reminder, but this is the slide we kind of started with a couple weeks ago. We put a lot of effort into the 3rd column, talked about a lot of those uses. And from that, we took it from the council that you would like to see a moratorium brought forward on those uses. And then we'll talk briefly a little bit on the single response ones. Based on some of your comments and similar type of uses, we've thrown maybe potentially a few more into the moratorium, if so directed by the council. So we'll be referring to this table. The colors are a little different than what was in your staff report. We updated a little bit. So what we have here is these are the uses in that 3rd column. These are all the ones that received multiple responses, the ones we talked about a couple weeks ago at length. We have the 3, call it the 3 districts across the top: Terra Terrace, Highway 13, the Central Corridor, and the uses going up and down on the column. If it's highlighted red, it'd be a use that would be subject to the moratorium in that district. If it's highlighted gray, that's a use that's already not allowed in that district. So there's no use for the moratorium. So quick example, motor vehicle service and repair minor, the very top. It will be affected by the moratorium along Tower Terrace and the Central Corridor District. It'll not be affected in the, Tower Terrace and Highway 13. It will not be affected in the Central Corridor because they're already not allowed. So there's no reason for it to be subject to a moratorium. So I'm gonna hang on this page for a second. If there's any questions before I move on, we can chat about this page right now. Or we can always circle back to, so, okay. So based on this, based on comments we had received, here's all the other uses that got a single response from one of you in your responses. We potentially can add delayed deposits, which is your payday loan, and a tattoo parlor and body piercing as uses subject to the moratorium along Tower Terrace and Central Corridor. We kept those uses available along Highway 13 because, again, that's typically where you find those uses. Not always, but it's where you can find those uses. So these are all the other uses that were called out. They weren't specifically saying, hey, I don't want this allowed. You may have asked for a little additional clarification on what it was or definition or what standards existed. But looking at this use, we want to make sure that there was no other uses listed that you specifically want to include into that moratorium. So I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead. Oh.
I was just gonna add, and sorry to stop your role here, Dave. So when staff was looking at the single responses, we felt that those 2 additional ones that are highlighted in red, the delayed deposit and the tattoo parlor, were probably more in line with what we were hearing from council as it relates to the vision of Tower Terrace on the central corridor. And so we are recommending that you add those two into the moratorium for those, in addition to the list on the previous slide. And then I'm sure Dave's gonna tell you that if in those columns, there's not a letter written there, then it's not allowed by code anyway.
So this is a new image you have not seen before. So if you have, this would be a good time to pause on this slide and I can answer some questions on any specific use or expand it.
CU is conditional use.
So I'm sorry, yeah, CU is conditional use, so that's approved through the zoning board of adjustment. Accessory means it has to be accessory to something. It's not the primary business. Has to be a part of something more.
Dave, what is a delayed deposit use type?
That is your payday loan, your cash advance, type of business, a higher interest rate, temporary loan.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking through this. I mean, I think we have to reiterate for anybody who's listening and maybe reiterate again on Thursday as to why we are doing this, especially for Tower Terrace Road, Center Corridor. We've done a lot of investment, we've got infrastructure, we've got one chance to get this right. And we've got this comp plan in play. So hence the reason for the moratorium. For anybody who's new to this discussion, that's part of this whole piece of why we're having the conversation. And I just think when we're looking at this and from everybody's perspective, I mean, we need highest and best use as we move forward in these. And so in the meantime, while we're looking at these, I look at these and that's why I'm kind of reiterating, and I want it to be very clear to folks what can be done or not done. So that we don't have a gray area and we're start to play, that we're playing into any people trying, we're doing this because we need to look at our comp plan. So my question is, so for example, right now you can have a lodge or a private club on Tower Terrace Row on all three of those, right? Because it's permitted and it's not in red, so the moratorium won't impact it. And it's not in gray, which means that it was not permitted to start with.
I'm sorry, I did not use any gray. So if it's blank, it's not allowed.
So blank is not allowed and.
P is permitted, so it's permitted in all three districts, correct?
Okay, and the moratorium would not affect that because in our responses, it was not an identified piece, right?
It's not, it was identified by at least a single user. It was not one that we saw or we felt like we heard from you on the last meeting, or it wasn't similar to some of those other uses, so we didn't include it. Now, if you want to include any of these uses in the moratorium, I'm gonna pick on lodge just because you brought it up.
Yeah.
But if you said we don't want to lodge in the central corridor, okay, then that would be something we'd add into that moratorium specifically from the central corridor. But that's your amendment to make, and we'll plug that into the ordinance if that's something that you'd like us to do.
Okay.
So yeah, the only two we picked out were just kind of similar, or things we picked up from conversations that we felt.
And I know you covered this for us before, but let me ask again. The difference between a neighborhood grocery is defined as neighborhood because of the square footage, or how does that get defined?
It's defined by the square footage.
Okay.
I can get you that specifically if you want it, but it's defined by square footage.
Okay, so it's meant to be smaller, not
Not
what
a,
we'd see in the
it
center
could be a
corridor.
Hy-Vee neighborhood versus a Hy-Vee grocery.
Okay, thank you.
But
So on that theme of groceries, would a Fairway be permitted?
I'm gonna get.
I mean, because there is a scale difference between Fairway
Correct.
and Hy-Vee. I guess where I'm trying to visualize is what's the threshold to be considered a neighborhood grocery? And maybe.
10,000 square feet or less.
Okay,
So so you're getting into a small Aldi's territory at that 10,000, more or less.
okay,
Fairways are slightly over. The Hy-Vee in town is
Sure.
almost 100,000, just to give you a sense of scale.
Okay.
Best Buy is another good example. I know it's not a grocery store, but that's about 40,000. If you've been in Best Buy, that's about 40,000 square feet.
And all gas stations would be included? Right?
Yeah, going back to the previous slide, new gas stations would be prohibited in all three of those areas on the map during the life of the moratorium or until.
Right. Okay. Anyone?
Where do our CVS's, Walgreens, Dollar Trees, Dollar Generals, I'm trying to think of the whole kind of conglomeration of some of these that we've seen a lot of locally. What are they, where do they fall in this list as far as classification?
I heard you said Dollar Tree, I heard.
Like a Dollar Tree, Dollar General, CVS, Walgreens.
They're gonna be a little separate, but actually they might not be
E-drug.
separate. They're gonna mostly fall under, it's all back to depending on their size. They'll fall into a retail sales, small, medium, large. And that's all, I think, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I think small is 5,000 or less. Medium is 10,000 and large gets large. Medium is between 10 and 30,000 square feet. Large is over 30,000 square feet and small is 5 to 10.
Can you
Go
go to
ahead,
the other
Steve.
screen?
I'm sorry, Steve?
Go to the other screen. Okay, so deep discount store,
That would be a definition we're gonna create because we do not have it today.
is that a Dollar General?
That's a Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Family Tree, Family Dollar, others.
Okay, that's what I thought that.
It's
was.
basically looking at an average price of goods that are, it is defined as bulk discount. I could have Carrie, I don't have it in front of me, but I could have Carrie read the definition we created for that.
So
as
the
well.
dollar stores that created some of the conversation about the moratorium is included
Yeah,
on
and that's,
this screen on that line.
yes, sir. And that said, this will not affect the Dollar Tree approved
Correct.
on Tower Terrace.
I understand that.
That's all the others.
Completely understand that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Right.
If I can, just,
Yeah.
Councilman Jensen brings up a good point that we want to spell out. So in the draft ordinance that's in your packet, there are two definitions, deep discount store, liquor, smoke and vape store. We had to define those in order to have them be subject to the moratorium because they weren't defined in our zoning code. They would fall under like the retail. They would fall under an umbrella thing. So in order to get specific, to make sure we're addressing what we believe we're hearing from council, we had to define it. So that is something that is a good point. So thank you for bringing that up. And how we address some of these other concerns.
And I should point out the definitions in there they're a definition created solely for the moratorium. If we were to develop specific code, we'd obviously build out a better definition that might be a little bit more encompassing of your vision.
Is a convenience store included? Not necessarily gas station. but
A convenience store is not included. We don't define, a convenience store is a retail business. It's the pumps that are making a gas station. So if it doesn't have pumps, it could be a standalone convenience store. Like say you see a lot of 7-Elevens out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could do that as long as you don't have the pumps.
Go ahead.
And again, we don't define convenience store. It's a retail store.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dave, can we go to the other slide?
Yep.
We're playing
No, it's
eyeball.
okay. That's why. I
We
was
are
hoping for this.
playing eyeball ping pong.
Yeah, that's a good discussion.
So I'm picking up on Sarah's inquiry of a moment ago. I think it was around retail sales of all types for Tower Terrace. I guess I'm wondering, is there a necessity to add any one of those to the moratorium as we sort through all of the myriad of issues? I'm less concerned about Highway 13, more concerned about Tower Terrace, that we just really think about certainly the large and medium, potentially being added to the moratorium so that we really are thinking about what we want to achieve along Tower Terrace. So Sarah, was I picking up on what your concern was?
You were.
I'm gonna bounce to the next slide, because I wanna visualize this a little bit. Gonna bump 2 slides here. So here's the Tower Terrace corridor. There's some very large, I know you can't see the property lines on here, but a large, I'm gonna say Hy-Vee because it's local. You know, they, in addition to the building, 100,000 square feet, they're gonna need the parking to go with it. And there's a lot of parking demands. I mean, it would guarantee they wouldn't be able to go up during the moratorium, but there's outside of finding land that can accommodate that as well, a large retail. Now, again, that could be 30,000 square foot building. Could be like an Aldi's, they could sure go in there. There's land, there's enough land available on a couple of those pads or a couple of those sites to make it happen.
So, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, and I went into a soak cycle on what Dave was
Well,
saying.
and, you know, we pick on large retail, but it could be, I use the term, I forget, I'm gonna call it mid-box. You know, that's your Best Buys, it could be a furniture store, it could be Bed Bath and Beyond's gone, but again, you're getting a sense of scale and type that they're kind of that, they're not that large, big box, but they're that mid-box that are getting over 30,000. They might be a standalone, or they might be part of a larger strip mall development. You know, they might have that one big anchor. So if that's something that's carved in, if for some reason have a multifamily show or a multi-tenant building show up and they want that bigger end cap, that could be an issue. We'd have to review if we capped it at 30,000 or we took out the large retail.
Help me out,
Okay, so I'm
Sarah.
gonna, no, because you picked up where I was going, so I probably led you on this adventure, but I look at it, now specifically, I'm addressing Tower Terrace.
Okay.
I look at this and I say, okay, I mean, coming back to this in the moratorium and the comp plan is, you know, we want time to be able to address what the vision for this space is. And I've kind of been chirping about this since I started, in my concern with some of the housing that's creeping up against this Tower Terrace Road, because it is supposed to be, I mean, it's going to be an east-west connector eventually, hopefully, with bridges and everything else. So I would back this up and say 2 things. One, if we would put a moratorium on, say, large retail, and then the most magnificent project in the whole wide world got dropped in our lap, and we just could not believe that this is the best thing that could come to Marion. We can address that, can't we? I mean, we're able to say, hold on a second, we have this moratorium because we slowed things down while we do the comp plan, but wow, we've got this once in a lifetime opportunity for something we've always wanted, wherever that is. We can move that aside and have the conversation. Am I correct?
We'd have to amend the ordinance that's approving this moratorium specifically. I have to refer to Kara on how that process.
But the short answer is yes.
Okay, so
So what I would say is if there is an ounce of concern on the part of council,
I would say,
let's just.
I'd like to add large box on Tower Terrace to not
What about
large
medium?
retail. I would ask even my colleagues, what would be a medium retail business that we envision that would go in there that we absolutely were like, we're gonna lose people if we don't put this on Tower Terrace Road? I mean, I just think I got a lot of the communication from the one establishment that was coming in from the neighborhood. And there was this desire for, why don't we have local retail, all the things that feels like this neighborhood and environment. But it is a retail. I mean, it will be a thoroughfare. And we also have a school there. So
But this isn't about deciding whether or not it should go there. It's just giving us the opportunity to come to agreement about what should go.
eventually,
What and
but we're gonna have the
where.
moratorium for a couple.
Right, it's not a
years.
decision on a yes or no.
So say if we didn't, if we included medium, are we missing out on something that would be?
I had my notes when I was scaling some businesses, 'cause I knew my question might come up. Walgreens is over 10, is between 10 and 30. CVS is between 10 and 30. Fairways can get up to just below 30 in some communities. All these would be affected. Any dollar type store would also be affected on a medium retail sales. Those are, again, similar businesses.
Thank you.
And-
That's very helpful for
And,
somebody
and,
not
and with those too, remember, the design standards exist. And then there's the other site plan, the buffering, those types of things that would be factored in as well. But if there is a concern with some of the examples that they've suggested, then I would recommend just include that medium in there as well. Because again, as the mayor's pointed out and Councilwoman Menzer, what you mentioned is the moratorium is not forever. What this is doing is it's allowing the community, the staff, to catch the breath, to do the analysis, so we're not constantly behind the 8 ball and being reactive. We're going through the comprehensive master plan process. That is where the community establishes the vision. And that's where we take our cues and start implementing the code. So this just gives us everything to catch up, catch our breath, and make sure that we're hitting it right, because we do get that one shot to get it
Better-
right.
So better to be over-inclusive, I think is what
Correct.
you're,
And-
is what you're saying.
Yeah, and right, I mean, if that gives us the opportunity to focus in on the research and the work that we need to with the comp plan without having to react to a potential petition that would come through for something that council's like, whoa, geez, we do have a concern, or the neighborhood's got a concern. It's better to do that, and we can, as we've done with with the UTVs, the fireworks, with anything else, we'll come back and review and provide an update. And if we get something that comes in, we'll have that dialogue with council and make sure that we're presenting options as well.
Stone.
Please include the medium.
So
My colleagues have something else, I'd like their input, but I would recommend including large and medium in the moratorium for Tower Terrace.
So anyone who's, feels strongly against that?
No, nothing's from.
Okay,
Okay, so I heard those two, large and medium, and the delayed deposits and tattoo parlor body piercing. Again, those are things that we added in without staff, without councils.
can you go back to the map? So,
Do you have a specific area of the map you want to look at?
well, I
Or-
mean,
or the whole map?
the
I got-
slide you showed, oh, are you?
I got sections I can go into as well. If you want to focus on a section, I can do that. or
Well,
I can go back to the entire
you had
map.
another one, Tower Terrace, that one. So what's red is what's included in the moratorium?
No, no, no.
Oh.
Everything within 850 feet of the center line Tower Terrace Road is included. So everything in red.
Or
including pink.
everything in
Yeah,
red?
this is the BC and BL zoning districts. So
Right, but so-
everything colored is affected, and that is the
But-
entirety of the commercial area.
Okay, so we're not including the residential property that's along Tower Terrace.
Yeah, these uses aren't allowed in the residential district, so there's no reason for more.
But if somebody files for rezoning in the middle, I mean, it gets sold for commercial use and,
The rezoning comes to the council, so you would have, that would catch it.
okay.
Yeah, we can't put a moratorium on, it doesn't exist today, so it's hard to.
But
put a
is it,
moratorium
it's gonna be, even though it's not part of the moratorium, it would be included in our discussion or visioning of what this corridor
It
should
will
look
be,
like.
it'll be part of that whole land use map
Okay,
discussion. as we
so
move forward to
my
content.
next question was gonna be west of the roundabout, same thing.
Yes,
That's
that's
not
that currently
included.
zone commercial, so when it does come in, we'd have. if
But
it
it'll
comes
be
in
part of
sooner,
the big picture planning.
Part of the big picture of the comprehensive plan update.
Comprehensive plan is gonna cover the entire community.
Okay, perfect. Gage.
Question just to clarify, so, cause heard Sarah say 2 years, but is it 1 year?
Right now, we set it for 1 year,
Yeah.
and it can be,
And why was a year chosen?
1 year, 1 year was just, I mean, honestly, we'll be working through the comprehensive plan, we're gonna put a focus on the comprehensive plan to focus on these commercial corridors is kind of one of their first little takedowns. So we'll start developing a pretty good idea, the direction of the land use map there, work toward that. It can be extended, the period of validity can be extended, it can be, you might say, hey, we're happy where it's at, we'll rescind it tomorrow. I mean, that's an option as well.
So is
the-
a year most comfortable for staff?
Yeah, the year is most comfortable because when you're establishing moratorium, you want to make sure that it's reasonable.
Right.
So, from that standpoint, establishing it for a year is showing that it's more reasonable. And we have the language in there that it may be extended
Right.
as
And
determined by the
You're
council.
saying reasonable as in longer would be less reasonable.
Correct.
Because what I was thinking and I was gonna ask is if it would be reasonable to officially put in a moratorium for 6 months with the option to extend it another 6 months to see where we're at in 6 months, or is that too short in your city's?
That's it's aggressive.
Okay.
That'd be very aggressive. I mean, the idea is to allow us time to start reviewing these 15 items. And I don't know if I have a whole lot.
Okay,
I
and
mean,
that's
I'll have
why
a
I
lot of
wanted to
research to
ask.
show us.
Yeah.
in
I
6
wanted-
months, but I won't
I
have
wanna
a
see
lot
what's
of
most
ordinance to
comfortable
show
for
you.
you
want
guys.
the time to be-
And we want to sync it up with the comp plan. The comp plan is really the key thing. The comp plan estimates are 18 months. I've been involved with a comp plan. We said 18 months and we got aggressive and we did it within a year, which is great. We want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure that there's public engagement as part of the comp plan. We want to make sure we're really fine tuning that vision. The year, it's reasonable. The council has the ability to extend it. I think 6 months is, as Dave said, is probably too aggressive. This just gives us a good breath, allows us to make sure that the comp plan process is synced up with it. And if we get to a point where we're nearing that year and we're not done with our process and our investigation, we can come back and council can extend it.
That makes sense. And yeah, my position is whatever is most comfortable for staff and their work. I was just wondering if it was like in 6 months, maybe we realize, oh, maybe these couple businesses shouldn't be on this list anymore and we can adjust it at a 6 month period or.
Our
adjust
research
or
may
change,
show
but-
that, hey, here's a
That's why
quick
I asked.
amendment to the code, adding this standard into the code regarding crematory retorts. Council may be happy with that little amendment. We can go ahead and put that amendment in to the zoning ordinance and then rescind that or, amend the motion to take that or ordinance to take those out. I'd like to do them in groups. I don't want to do them one at a time. I'd rather take down 2 or 3 and then again, some of the bigger issues, we have to wait for the comprehensive plan to help guide us on that.
And one of the things that we've talked about as a staff, that when we have a kickoff, assuming council approves the contract with RDG for the comprehensive master plan update, when we have our kickoff meeting, we've talked already that one of the first things we're going to say to RDG is, hey, we've got this moratorium. Here are the key areas. This is really going to be an important priority for us as we dive into this. So really can hope that kind of puts the focus in on those areas first, and then helps us propel into the rest of the update. So this is going to be top of mind for us as we go into that.
Yeah, I think we want to have enough time to be thoughtful about it. This is not something we want to be doing regularly or again.
Right,
I
for
mean,
sure.
it's
and
a,
that's
it's a
not what I was
very
coming
rare
at.
case that you're going to do a moratorium. So we want to have the time to be thoughtful about it and make sure we're doing it right and engaging who needs to be engaged and all that. Go ahead, Randy.
One of the things I was thinking of as we were going through this as well is I would hope that we would put a little bit, I know the chamber had done these reports, and that's the study of our leakage. I would hope we would put a little bit of a spotlight on that for these particular corridors. So maybe potentially we could actually go out and market some of those entities that we would like to try to retain some of those either service dollars or retail sales to stay in the local community, but then also to give us a little bit of a different flavor of things that we may be overlooking. Cause it's kind of funny how we're all going back to the same names by logo, it's same drugstores, same retails, maybe some of those other ones would obviously bring that little bit of a flavor we're looking for in that corridor that are maybe ones that are not even in the local area, that are either coming from, outside of the local community or, outside of the region by state. So that would be something too, I would ask that we potentially just take a look at. Again, it's just a little bit being proactive and trying to, market and bringing that back into rather than us just responding to those that sees, potentially sees a footprint.
That's an excellent point, Councilman. We actually talked about that, not specifically regarding the leakage report, but Jill, Mark, myself, and Brady and Emily over at Medco, we talked about just that point as part of the comprehensive master plan process, making sure they're engaged for that very reason. So I do want to use that as an opportunity to segue. We have, the mayor and I've presented, or provided an update to the board, the chamber board last week on this. And Mark has asked that the mayor and I share an update with the Medco board. I think it's the 17th, to provide an update on the moratorium, but our partners, at the Chamber and Medco have been, fully apprised of every step along the way as we've been going through this.
Question. Where do consignment stores fit in? Whether it's the large resales or the nonprofit consignments or and not just, this is more the general, not just the Tower Terrace Road area.
General retail.
They're general
Just
retail based on the
Retail
size.
small or medium or large, depending on how big they are, so.
And then one more question. Part of the comp plan, it's maybe a little bit, Ryan, part of the comp plan and as we move forward will be the ability to find different ways that we identify retail. So it isn't all just in a bucket, right? Based on square footage that potentially we could come up with in the comp, and I know we're on the committee, but that
It's a-
some of these uses get a little more defined or
It's,
not?
I don't want to say it's going to define the uses. That's what the zoning ordinance is for, but the comprehensive plan is going to give us some guidance and recommendations as part of the implementation of the comp plan. So it's going to say that, I don't think it's going to change the fact that this is commercial land out use. It's going to say the same thing, our current comprehensive plans. But what it's going to do in its strategies, it's going to lay out, again, I don't know them off verbatim, but they're going to say, high quality, architectural elements, diverse commercial, and here's the strategies that you could implement into your zoning code to attract that use or that if you want some community desperate for a grocery store, it may say, this is great. Here's the strategies that you can use to attract that grocery store. And then you got to put it, then the hard part, you got to get it into your zoning ordinance to create those standards for that grocery store to operate.
Yeah,
So
so
it'll lay
it's-
out a lot of that. It'll lay out the vision. It'll give a lot of broad statements that we can then say, okay, hey, we want a high quality development. And it might, so what does that mean? That's the council will plug that into the code, and that's what we can enforce these folks with, to say, hey, the code says you need to do X, Y, and Z to meet that intent of the zoning or of the comprehensive plan. So it may still be some of the same uses, but it'll be elevating them to the next level.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. Dave described, the comp plan is that higher arching, that's that foundational document. But then, once we get that approved, as you mentioned, it will give you guidance and recommendations on how to implement. And so that's where the staff will be working with our consultants to really craft the zoning code amendments to reflect that. So in the example that you're talking about, just having a bucket of retail, the based on what the vision coming in the comp plan is, we can start narrowly defining that and become specific that this type of so defining more specific retail instead of just a bucket of retail.
Anything else? Do you have anything else?
Just a quick little wrap up. I think it's
Yeah.
important to note. We talked about a lot of uses, but this does affect a lot of properties. We notified just over 360 property owners, and these are only the people that were affected by this potential this is every property within those colored areas that we've identified. So I did want to point that out. The number in front of the zoning districts there is the number of lots affected. So along Highway 13 is 25 properties out of the BR zoning and so on down. So again, that is important to note. So there's the Highway 13 boundaries, about 1,200 square feet or 1,200 feet from center line. Just for reference, Walmart is right there. We looked at Tower Terrace Road map quite a bit, and this does include the property along Winslow Road. And then the central corridor, again, the number of properties affected. This is all the corridor districts we have. It's not set by street because the zoning districts are very specific and they're very limited to where they are at. So those are all the affected properties as part of this. We did, again, sent out 360 notices, have begun receiving some calls and emails. 2 of them were from folks with vested interest. This would be the Green Acre Storage on Highway 13 and 151. That project's far enough along that they will not, while storage garages are subject to this moratorium, that project will not be. This is also the Dollar Tree on Tower Terrace Road, affected by the moratorium, but not this specific project. And there's one other storage garage facility that got started a little while ago behind Dairy Queen in Casey's out by Highway 13. It should be wrapping up, but I put that one on the list as well as something that's far enough along and we'll be issuing a final occupancy on that, probably shortly after this moratorium's approved.
And Dave, we've also received a couple emails from folks that already have businesses in some of these areas asking about, well, does this impact me? Nope, you're operating, you're there, you're fine. So this, again, doesn't apply, anything that's up and operational now, this does not apply to. Just anything new coming in.
It does affect their ability to expand if they had expansion plans,
Right.
though. So
If they haven't submitted for permit
correct.
already.
If they haven't submitted for a permit, if they wanted to expand 6 months from now, they'd be limited by the expansion. So.
Go ahead.
Just on that point, I think the probability of an expansion within our 1-year moratorium window, if we have one of those, I'll be surprised,
Might be 2.
or 2, okay.
There might be 2 already, so.
All right.
And I've talked to them and they understand.
Yeah, okay, so, but depending on what it is, we can make an exception, correct?
It'd be an amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, all right, so we always have that as as an option
Correct.
if whatever's going on is compelling, okay?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I had one more thing. Oh, that was it? Okay. Anything else? Anything else, Dave?
No, we're gonna add those 4 uses in based on what we heard, and we'll have an ordinance drafted up here prior to Thursday for your review.
Okay, nothing else is marked on the remainder of the agenda. Any questions? Okay, thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.